Hello, I'm Vanessa Skinner, and welcome to Lost in Translation, the Language of Math. We are going to go ahead and get started because our time is quick. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have been a language specialist for about 17 years. Of course, I started when I was 13, and so I'm not that old. But anyway, and I will confess, I started a bit late. I stayed home with my kids for a bit. But I am passionate about equitable educational opportunities for our emergent bilingual students. That has been my life work, and I love it. My co-presenter, unfortunately, could not be here with us today. She is Dr. Karla Rosal, and she teaches graduate and undergraduate courses at SMU. We worked together several years. It's been about 3 or 4 years now since we worked together, but we've remained friends and colleagues, and she apologized for not being able to be here with us. But I want you to know that this is also her work too. So we are excited that you are here to learn with us. All right, so there we are, and our contact information. So our goals for today are to understand the importance of developing EB's academic language in mathematics, to understand the role of process standards in EB's instruction and language development, and also to use a planning protocol for academic language development in mathematics integrating process standards. So we have a lot to cover. So what is our why? If you want to use the chat for just a second, and what is your why? I'll give you a hint. We're going to look a little tiny bit at data, but I believe our why is more than just the numbers. I know it is for me. So I'll let you have a moment. We cannot see your screen if you're presenting. Oh my. Let's see. Here we go. Sorry about that. It was on there. Okay, can you see it now? Okay, I have a thumbs up by Felicia. Perfect. Okay, I apologize for that. I'm going to go back for just a second and let you see our goals. But better than that, I want you to see Karla. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Let's just do it this way. All right, there we are, and there are our goals. And here's our why. So, what is our why, or what is your why? I'll give you a second to share in the chat. Okay, I don't see anybody sharing. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you repeat your question, please, to the attendees?
Okay, so the question is just to share our why about why it's important that we look at developing EB's academic language and mathematics. And just our goals for today, why are you interested in this topic? Why are you here at this session? Why is this important to you? That you're taking out your time on Saturday afternoon, and a lovely Saturday afternoon, that is. Oh, equal access to the curriculum. That is fabulous. That is a lot of why I am passionate about the work that we do. Equal access. Students really need to understand what they are doing in class. That's true. If they don't understand the language, they don't understand what they're doing. It builds comprehensible input for our learners. Yes, it does. So, oh, my sound is going in and out. Maybe I need to get a little bit closer. How is that? Is that better? Okay, I'll just talk a little bit louder. All right, so just to give us a little bit of more for our why, our data. Our data shows, this is just data from the state. And if you'll look closely, what are some things that you notice? I have it boxed just in case you don't see it right off. If you notice, this is third grade reading and third grade math. Okay, this is at the meets level, grade level or above. This is our Hispanic population. This is our total EB population. And if you notice, just last year, we were at 36% for our Hispanic students, and at just 38% for our total EB students. So we're not doing that great. We're not doing that great on our student assessments, our end of the year assessments. I know we are coming off of COVID, but we didn't do that well before COVID. So we can't blame it on that. So this is one of my favorite quotes. It says that language shapes the way we think and determines what we can think about. I think it speaks for itself. And if you know me, you know I love a good quote. I was in the session just last with Ton, and when he quoted Brene Brown, I had to say a hallelujah because I love her. And I love her clarity is kind quote. So I think this is totally appropriate for this learning also. We want to bring clarity to our students in terms of math. So the research on math is specific to mathematics instruction for EBs provides us some guidelines. The first one is to treat language as a resource and not a deficit, to address much more than vocabulary and support EB's participation in mathematical discussions as they learn English. I know that oftentimes I've heard teachers say, well, just when they learn some more language, they'll be able to do it. And that is true, but we cannot wait for them to become proficient in English. So we have to address and instruct our students, no matter what their proficiency level is, and provide them support and language learning at the same time. So the last one is to draw on multiple resources available in classrooms, such as manipulatives, drawings, graphs, and gestures, as well as their home language. And if you were in the last session, he spoke about that too. I love that we're all on the same page. So how do we do that? The first thing is looking at our process standards. And I know in my district, I am in Plano, and we are focusing a lot on process standards. And to me, process standards just means language and oral language practice. When it asks students to communicate, that means students are talking. They are talking in class. When they are talking, they are processing, they are using the language, they are processing their own thinking about the math instruction. When it says create and use representations, okay, so what does that look like? It means that Our students are actively engaged in the learning. They're organizing it, they're recording it, they're communicating, again, their ideas. Again, communicate, display, explain, justify, all need to start with our oral language production first. So we will know students have an understanding of the process skills. In your classrooms, use the chat to type in some ways that you implement the process standards, process skills. How do you practice that? And also, if you can tell me your grade level, if you are a grade level teacher, or what grade level you support, that would be helpful too, just to maybe focus the conversation a little bit. Swirling every day, excellent. Speaking, writing, reading, writing, listening, using strategies like QSSA. I love that. Love QSSA. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so we'll know students have an understanding of the process skills. Oh, middle school, perfect. When they learn the language of real life context related to the target context. Can they talk about the language content in a real life context when they talk about how much grass they'll need for the backyard, or how much a recipe calls for, the volume of something when they're measuring, etc. When students are familiar with word problems related to the target content, and then when they can use the manipulatives and tools related to the content. And when they know concepts are represented in different ways. I was in a class not too long ago, and I was just so impressed by this math teacher, how she had her students using just Post-it notes to do some problem solving, but they were using the Post-it notes as a support for them to talk about and explain and justify their process in the problem solving. It was a beautiful thing. I hate I didn't record it. All right, so how do we get there? How do we do these things? Some of us are already doing it, but how do we do it a little bit more thoughtfully? That's what we're going to be talking about today. How do we think through the demands of the standards? Okay, so I have a 3-step process. It's kind of a protocol or a process. I used the term protocol earlier, but it's the same. So the first thing we do is we ask, what is the standard? You know, what is the standard asking of our students? What does it say? So when we are unpacking that standard, we establish our target. So we're looking for the verbs of that standard. If the verb, the target is to explain, then what is it going to look and sound like? It's to classify. What is that going to look and sound like? What does it mean to compare? And secondly, what language do students need to articulate that understanding? I think as teachers, we are great at teaching vocabulary. I think math teachers, in math, we're good at establishing the vocabulary, but we don't often take the next step of establishing what it means to use the vocabulary, and then looking at the assessments to see what the assessment tells us about the language students will need. Okay, what is the learning going to look and sound like? So that's the second part of our our process. And then the third part is what instructional strategies, what oral language practice will we implement to increase our learning, increase student learning? And then what learning experiences will they do? Will they need to reach the target? Okay, I'm going to stop there for just a second to see if anybody has any questions about the process. What I'm going to model it with some standards in the next couple of slides, but I want you to look at this slide and just kind of process it for a few minutes. And if you have any questions, we can talk about that. You can either use the chat if you have a question, or raise your hand if you'd like. I can, or unmute yourself. That's fine, because it's a small group, so I don't mind if you want to talk. All right, I saw that heart, Felicia. That's great. Everybody's got some understanding. Sure.
Felicia said she agrees with your sentiments about vocabulary.
Okay, perfect. I just saw that. All right, great. Well, we will move on. Okay, so here's our standard. And when I use the term unpack, it's basically just looking at it closely, examining what we're asking students to do. And this is a third grade standard, I believe. And it is talking about number operations, and students applies a mathematical process to understand how to represent and compare whole numbers, the relative position and magnitude of whole numbers, and the relationships between numeration systems related to place value. And then we have, of course, the student expectations. When we look at our standards, sometimes, at least for me, it's a mouthful, and I'm not always sure what that looks and sounds like. I recommend if your district uses Lead Forward, it's an excellent resource to pick apart and drill down for the standards, so you get a better understanding of what it means for students to be able to do these things. Okay. Here is an example of a third grade test question. And so what language, just looking at this test question, what language would students need to know to be able to answer this and complete the problem? Okay, what language would they need to know? Greater than, less than, yes. Okay, in the classroom, remember if we go back to our standard, that's also asks us to justify. And sometimes that justification is going to mean understanding the value of these numbers in terms of place value, okay? And knowing that 90,000 is greater than 9,000. And how do I know that? Because there are 90,000s and this one is 9,000. Okay, so really thinking through what that means to be able to know it, but also to be able to justify it. And sometimes, especially in with the numbers between Penelope and Olivia, it's 98,000, it's 98,000. Sometimes students will miss the problem just because they're so similar. And so when we are when we are teaching this and the students are practicing, it's important for them to be able to look at the numbers and compare them, but also compare them using the appropriate terminology. So there's 300 in the hundreds place, and there's no 0 in the hundreds place in terms of place value. So again, we need those process standards to help students understand, but also be able to display, explain, and justify, because that just allows for deeper understanding. And with deeper understanding, students can apply it in different contexts. And that's what we want for our students. All right. So let's unpack the standard. So this one we talked about, we said represent and compare. Those are our verbs of the standard. What does it mean for a third grader to be able to represent and compare whole numbers? And then compose and decompose. What does that mean? What does it look and sound like? And then the vocabulary that we're looking at for students to know: some, thousands, hundreds, tens, ones. Okay, and they're supposed to use objects, pictorial models, numbers, including expanded notation as appropriate. Okay, so that's a lot that students need to do. Okay, so I have this little work document that Karla and I just developed, and it's just simple organization to helps us think through what the language. And so use and learn the following skills. So what are we asking students to do in that particular standard? We're asking to communicate, to explain, to justify, and compare. And so use and learn the following concepts. For the mathematical concepts, they have to be able to represent whole numbers. They have to be able to compare whole numbers, and then understand the relationships in relation to the place value. So that's really breaking down what it is the standard is asking for us to do. And then over here, again, they have to be able to create, represent, and use. And so there we have a category: how do we make that content comprehensible? By using the value charts, the expanded notation frame, base 10 blocks, numbers as related to whole objects. And as we're doing that, we want students to demonstrate their understanding using this language. So we develop our content vocabulary, and we develop some frames to help students do that. Okay, so I can compose this number with this number of manipulatives. Okay, so as we are having students create models for the numbers, then we want them to be able to use the language. We model it and give them opportunity to practice the oral language development with these frames. Okay, so this is basically the thinking that Karla and I propose, is that we think through our standards and think about what it looks like and sounds like in our classrooms. What is the language specifically for this content learning, and how are they going to practice it? How are they going to use the language? So this is a 6th grade TEK. And so the same process, we look for those verbs. They have to classify, they have to identify. We have a number that is opposite and its absolute value. Rational numbers, they have to know representations for division, to include fraction notation. And I will confess, this is math that's above my grade level. So this is Karla's expertise. Her math, she is the math genius. But we will muddle through this part. But again, here's our thinking. Here's our document that helps us think through the process. Use and learn the following skills. They have to identify, describe, locate, order, and compare. What does that look and sound like? They have to classify and justify. And we bolded the justify, because when students are able to do that, then they know the why. Blank is this kind of number because this is justification. And this is really important for our kids to be able to do that, because that also determines their depth of knowledge. If do they really know it? When they're able to justify their answer, then we have a firm grip on their real understanding. Okay. You can also, speaking of differentiation from my last session, you can modify the frames to be a little bit more simpler if need be. But also keeping in mind, we want access for all our students, but we also want language learning for all of our students. So depending on who's the students in your class, we want to be able to make it comprehensible, but also allow them to practice the language that we want them to learn. So that's why we provide the frames to scaffold that language learning, and then also to give them appropriate language models to use. Okay. One of the things that I will note is that I see a lot of teachers who will use slides during their instruction, and that's great for a lot of different things. But it's not so great when you're using frames and those frames go away. You use it for instruction and then it goes away. So I encourage you to use chart paper so that stays up, that stays available for students to use when they are talking. Okay. All right. So now we're going to take some time for us to practice. And okay. Get my copy. Okay, so those are some slides I'm going to share with you. Okay. Okay, perfect. I see you all in here. I'm going to stop sharing. Instruction page. Okay, so if you see the instruction page, says to choose a slide per group, and you can work individually, to just a few of you, or you can work in pairs if you'd like. I have linked some frames that as a support, and if you'll see the standards in the chat, and you can work through, and we'll take maybe 10 minutes. And if you want to, unmute yourself, and I'm going to pop in to the, I think you'll need to, I don't know, Veronica, can we not do group chat rooms? I didn't see that on.
I don't think that was one of the things we set the settings for.
Okay, yeah, because I don't see them.
Right.
So since there's only a few of us,
I think we could work
there's
as a group together in this room together.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. So let's look at the sample. Let me go make sure I'm sharing the right one. Okay, can you see the?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So everybody's already in. This one is the sample. So this was the 3rd grade sample, and here's one for 4th grade. I know I have a middle school teacher in here. The orange is elementary, the blue is secondary. So do we have mostly elementary or mostly secondary? I'm not sure.
I think we have a couple secondary people. Is anyone elementary?
Okay, so I have the blue are secondary. There's a 6th grade one. So let's up. We've got somebody working already. Great. Already on the 4th grade one. So if we're working through it, they've got classify. Perfect. You see the cheek down here. Students able to apply mathematical process to analyze geometric attributes in order to develop generalizations about their properties. They have to classify 2-dimensional figures based on the absence or presence or absence of parallel, perpendicular. Okay. So if we think about the vocabulary, who can type in some of the vocabulary you think we might need for this standard? Do I have 2 people on here? Is it that's 1 person? Oh, it's 1 person. Okay. Here's 1 person.
So it looks like Vanessa is working on slide 3 in that Google slideshow. So if everybody wants to jump on slide 3 and work together, and then add in that information.
Anonymous Wolverine is going to work. Love it. Perfect. Classify two-dimensional figures. So on the top part, I would probably put some of that vocabulary on the content vocabulary part. Not a big deal. The thinking is the most important thing. It's just a matter of organizing. So it's not a big deal for it to be either or, but just to I like to put it there because it makes helps me when I'm developing the frames. Great. Excellent. Anybody see anything that we might be missing? I will probably say figures present, absent, yet parallel. Also points and lines. Points, lines, rays, angles, perpendicular. Oh, we got perpendicular, yeah. Points and lines. Okay, great. Yeah. I'm also putting the lead forward frames in the chat also. Yeah. Yeah, this is great. I love that frame. This is a two-dimensional object or figure because, so they have to know why is it two-dimensional? It has height and width. This line shows the height and width, or this angle. Perfect.
Vanessa, you have 5 minutes.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. That went fast. I knew it would. I know this because perfect. Perfect. Hopefully, if you're not familiar with math teaching, I get it. I understand, but learning, watching and learning is fabulous. Okay. All right, well, one of the things that we can think about, I'm gonna switch back to our the regular slides, and we can debrief for a few minutes because our time is short, and I want us to come to a close that makes sense. Veronica, can you see my screen now where it says let's practice?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So what are some of your takeaways from this practice? This just thinking through this. What are some of the things that you felt or experienced or thought, oh, okay, this is easy, or this is anything? If you will share your thinking, just a second in the chat, just so I know if you felt like. I know one of the things for me, the biggest thing for me going through this process is understanding the depth of knowledge that students have to have for real deep math learning and application. Even our lower grades. Thank you, Maria. You like the learning tool. It does focus. It does help us focus on the learning, and it also helps us focus on those process standards and why they're so important to help students think through the learning. You know, a lot of times in math, the students see a lot of practice worksheets, and that doesn't help with the thinking. So thank you so much. I hope that we have accomplished our goals today of understanding the importance of developing EB's academic language, understanding the role of the process standards, and also using a planning protocol to help develop that language. I also want to share with you some resources. This is my favorite, Valentina. I'm not going to share that, but I'm going to get out of there so I can put it in the chat. But teacher toolkit, that's a great resource to help you look for ways to have students show what they know, and great ideas for engagement. Of course, I mentioned Lead Forward as a excellent tool for understanding our text a little bit better. And then this one is the ELPS toolkit, and it is just a good resource to look at frames and just think through some of our language development and developing some frames based on language functions and tenses. So it's a good little resource. Put that in the chat. I want to thank you so much for having. You have any questions or comments, please reach out to me. You can find me on Twitter, but I'm not totally prolific on Twitter as much as I should be. But anybody have any quick questions? I know we're going to. Oops. Veronica, I think I just sent it to you. If you'll put it in the chat for everybody. Thank you, Juanita. All right, you guys have a great afternoon, and I look forward to learning with you in the rest of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.